Now, Apple's equity is very strong. So imagine that headphone going through the whole entire value chain. And when it comes out to customer journey, there's already a trust and credibility from the iPhone, from the Mac, from everything that Apple has touched. If the headphones do not deliver on the value of every product that Apple has introduced previously, it will burn in the past more than the future. Well, marketing is both process and planning. So prior to the birth of brand, which is in the 90s, early 90s, I think Nike is a perfect example who really exhibited the power of brand. Even Steve Jobs was inspired by Nike when he took over the helm of Apple, and he showcased it in many of his conversations.
All right, so this is a highly anticipated podcast episode with the one and only Baaghil, the brand scientist that I've been following on LinkedIn and chasing for a long time so that he can join us on this podcast. I've been a big fan of Baaghil since my friend introduced me to him. And I haven't stopped being entertained and educated by his posts, and rather controversial and tough stances on marketing, branding, and brand in general. So welcome to the program, Baaghil.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so let's start with your background, your journey. How did you get to this point? I know that you have some videos on YouTube, very few, but some videos that talks about how you started in California with like $500 budget, and then you transferred it into this business that you sold, and then you have such an interesting journey that I'd love to know more about.
So I did my informative years in between Europe and America. So I did my informative years in Malta. Then I moved to North Dakota, where I finished my high school. And after that, I moved to University of Maine, and I did my 4 years in marketing. My GPA was not impressive at all. So I had a low GPA, 2.0. So barely made it, just top. And going out of college was not easy. It was a struggle. And as you know, you live in America. It's not just your name does not work. So whatever you get in college is what it would be the first initial introduction. But I would say that it's a blessing in many ways, because I started working for Edison Brothers for a bit. And then I moved to DHL. Then I moved to Marshalls. And was started with sales and marketing, more transactional business than anything else. But then I learned in strategies when I started working with Keith Black, who discovered me in New York and said, you know what, you've got something, let me walk you through. And he did. He mentored me. He supported me. He made me work with Ralph Lauren for a bit. From there, I really gained my confidence and took off. But I knew employment was not a thing for me. You know, I'm very difficult to manage. I'm out of the box kind of person. I love creation, and I abhor processes and routines. It's not something that I do well with. So I knew that I might have to find my own space. So that's when I turned about 30, I decided, you know, I've got to go out and fetch what's for me. So I traveled in many parts of the world: Mexico, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, Dubai, Hong Kong. Eventually, in Hong Kong, I realized, when I lived in Hong Kong for about a year, I realized it was off and on a year in Hong Kong, but because I was commuting between Hong Kong and Saudi Arabia. So I networked a lot there, and I met people who told me about being visible. So the word personal brand didn't even exist. People were talking about visible. So what does that exactly mean? So visible means you need to act like a celebrity. And now that word celebrity has transformed right now to become personal brand. So I understood I had to do a few things, networking one of them, being in the right place, social pressure, wearing expensive watches, your clothing, the type of car you drive, and all that stuff, all the aesthetics. Little did I know that eventually things have changed for me in 2008 when I've published my after I published my first book, which was not even successful, I realized that it's not about celebrity, it's not about network, it's about the value you're going to bring to the table and how unique that value is. So I looked deeper in what is it that I do and why and what am I good at. So I took these three different types of journeys and craft them out to know what are the values I can bring and benefit. And I found out really that's more of a high strategy thinking more than the tactical. So operations and tacticality is not my best. Creativity, strategy is my best. So I pursued deeply on brand and marketing from a strategic approach. And I went through consultancy in 2008 and I picked it up. And since then, I've been on that journey across three different continents, published four books, and spoke in more than 60 countries.
What a wonderful journey, and what a wonderful gift for someone to find their
Yes,
gift and be able to pursue it and make a living out of it.
absolutely.
And I want to ask you something, and I know that you're passionate about all the misconceptions and misbeliefs about marketing.
Yes.
And marketing is one of those professions that a lot of people claim they're really good at, but nobody, like very few or very, very select few who actually know what's all about. So what pains you in the marketing landscape these days?
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm a marketing graduate. If I was not marketing graduate, I don't think I will. I would sort of. I wouldn't. I don't think I would receive this pain as harsh as it is. But because I'm a marketing graduate and I studied marketing, and my college advisor is still my friend to today, Dr. Gordon Mosley. And when I hear somebody talk about marketing mix and he doesn't understand the fundamental of marketing, how to build the mix itself, it's hurtful because I went through the drill and he's just probably an engineering graduate who worked for a multinational in the Middle East and did a 4 years in brand management. All of a sudden, he's a marketing expert. He doesn't have the knowledge, but he has a 4 years experience. No, thinking about the knowledge is not important. No, knowledge is very important. Knowledge and experience are both great assets in any form of skill sets. But the point is, the misconception hurts myself as a consultant, hurts any marketing and brand consultant, because the misconception brings wrong results. So if you don't have the knowledge, how do you apply it? You can't apply it. Well, if you're going to talk about 4 years experience, your 4 years experience has been a routine experience. You're applying something off the book that Procter and Gamble, Unilever, Colgate, and so forth did. And they built it elsewhere, like in the US and in Europe. And then they came to the Middle East where it was only a trading goal. So for them, the Middle East is sales goals. So the brand management that's behind the desk there, the only thing he's doing is managing the touch points across different communications, whether it's advertising, PR, and so forth. But he doesn't understand the marketing fundamentals. So when he goes from that experience to the local side, he struggles. Obviously, he does a lot of different mistakes, and I've written over 40 different case studies. So this misconception on marketing hurts me as a consultant in the business itself. Because when you have a general mind that thinks marketing is just little advertising where you have jingles. So you get a popular singer and then he has a jingle and talks about the ad. And if that's marketing, then I don't think any of us would struggle. You know, you know what I mean? I don't have to go to college.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have to go 4 years college for that.
I was once hired as a CMO for a big traditional insurance company, and they thought that the marketing function is that this is the guy who's going to create the brochure for us, and literally they actually believed in that. So yeah, I hear you loud and clear about the painful moments of how people misunderstand marketing, and sometimes I feel like it is business without really expert knowledge in marketing is really no business, especially in this day and age. How often do you encounter someone who has a completely novel idea and doesn't need to differentiate this idea from the clutter? So how would you define marketing in principle? And let's start with the different terminologies that I know you're passionate about differentiating and explaining.
Yeah. Well, marketing is both process and planning. So prior to the birth of brand, which is in the 90s, early 90s, I think Nike is a perfect example who really exhibited the power of brand. Even Steve Jobs was inspired by Nike when he took over the helm of Apple, and he showcased it in many of his conversations. Now, marketing has moved from strategy to tactical. So it's plan and process. Now, what marketing does, it exhibits the value, the functional value that's delivered through the brand. Example, you go to Walmart. The moment you walk in and forget Walmart, Macy's or anywhere, the moment you walk in, whatever provokes your emotion, that's the behavior side of the brand, the emotional side of the brand. Now, there's a functional side of the brand. So the moment you touch the product and you feel it, now that's the functional side of the product, of the brand, which is marketing. Now, marketing here is trying to validate what the brand has claimed. Okay? So marketing is part of the sum of the brand, but marketing is trying to validate the claim here. Once you look at the price and you'll say if it's cheap or expensive and so forth, you're going to question the quality. The word quality is a functional value. It still hits on marketing. Okay? Now, after that, where did you buy it from? If you bought it from 34th Street and 7th in New York, all right, you would imagine not a low price, you imagine an average. Like that could be Macy's, for example. But when you go to Nordstrom or Bloomingdale or Saks and you see a higher price, the location resonates, the quality of the product resonates, and at the same time, the price makes sense. These are marketing mix. They enforce the value delivered by the brand themselves. This is where you start validating what the brand claims. Now, the brand is just an idea with distinctive values. So when you buy into an idea, eventually you need credibility and trust. But an idea that doesn't deliver a true essence of the value that builds loyalty, retention, relationship based on credibility and trust, no, you have to exert a lot of effort to make a sale. So where marketing plays a role is on the functional side, and the brand, and it's part of the sum of the brand, and the brand plays both functional and emotional.
Yeah, that's a very neat definition. So what prompts you to become a brand scientist, and usually what are the things that you encounter often when you start engaging with a company, and what size of company do you work with? Is it does the size of the company also play a difference in terms of how you approach your work and your
Yes.
strategy?
Well, first of all, I like the question when you said, how would I label myself as a brand scientist? So there's two sides of it. Calling myself a brand consultant today is like everyone that's on LinkedIn with a title, whether he's got an experience or not. So that's commoditized. To make a POD, point of difference, is I'm not a brand consultant. To many, what brand consultant is logo designer, aesthetics. So I'm not that. So that's why I call myself brand scientist. Now, when a client asks about brand strategy, unfortunately, now that's also commoditized, because a designer will give you 5 logos with a few words, will tell you that's a brand strategy. So I created something called brand clarity, the one-word model. And that itself is a strategy I apply when you want a brand strategy. So this is a strategic framework that I own. Now, the type of clients I work with, I never say no, as long as someone or the company can afford my fees. But I prefer to work with visionaries. I prefer to work with clients that have intellectual strength. Because what I do is idea and values. So that needs to materialize eventually by the organization itself. To grasp the idea itself and the value, the organization's leadership need to have some certain of intellectual strength, so they can find the subject much relatable and they're able to visualize the whole entire journey throughout the process of consultation. Now, if we're going to talk about the size of the organization, but I've done private, I've done semi-government, I've done government. So I've done all sectors. I don't do startups, but I do founders, which is more established. There's an increment of growth there year on year. Some are scaled, but usually those are the ones who are scaling. They're coming for repositioning. They're approaching me. But just startup, no, I try to avoid that as much as I can, but I do anyways.
Yeah, I was reading a book recently called The One-Page Marketing Plan. And what's distinctive about the intro of that book is that they make a clear distinction between a company that we know about, like, for example, Apple, Nike, all these big international brands, versus a small managed service provider business. Someone is just starting a consultancy business or an agency business. So a lot of the misconceptions of people, like they look at these big company brands who have invested millions of dollars in brand awareness and over extensive period of time, and they think that the marketing they do, they try to mimic what Apple is doing or what Nike is doing to their little boutique shop, and then they see that, oh, the money burns so quickly and with almost no result. And so that's why I was asking you whether your approach is different with a startup with no brand recognition at all versus a company that's already established and needs kind of a fine-tuned positioning strategy or something to emphasize their brand.
Fundamentally, the startups let's say fundamentally brand strategy takes a very long time to build. Okay, so it requires a lot of fundings. Startups are cash burners, especially tech startups. They're cash burners. It's known. So when you have a brand strategy and a startup comes in, it's very difficult because at that stage, the startup's still tweaking on their idea. A lot of the startups, when they had an idea, 80% of that, the nature of that idea has shifted to something completely new, an entire new business model. So having a strategy at the beginning, if a startup approaches me, I always tell them, don't work on a strategy because you don't know how the market is going to respond back to your idea. Just keep on tweaking till you find your niche. Once you find your niche, you can start thinking about how you're going to do your brand and so forth. But having a whole entire brand strategy and so forth for a startup that hasn't even launched and is going to go into cash burning, I don't recommend it. I would not work on it because I would burn my reputation.
You call your framework brand clarity. Tell me the components of that strategy or that framework.
More than happy to speak about it. So brand clarity, one word model, that's what I call it. I discovered this back in 2013 when I was working with clients, and I've been using it and I've seen it how it works well. Now, where's the pain problem here? The pain problem is when you work on brand strategy, when it comes to the promise or the claim you want to make, usually it ends up with a branding agency that doesn't understand how the value chain works. So when people say brand is a cost, or when CEOs and board members say brand is a cost, and does it generate revenue? Well, brand is the sum of the business. Brand is the point of reference. Simple, when you say Apple, it registers in the brain what it is versus Apple, the fruit. So a lot of the leadership don't understand this. What they understand is the P&L, the balance sheet, and so forth. And it's true. You need to show brand impact on that P&L. For you to show the brand impact on that P&L, you need, in my model, brand clarity, the one word model, is that you need to first pair the value chain and the customer journey together. Because when everything happens in the value chain, that's where the truth is. So when you create the claim out of the value chain and it goes to the customer journey, the client or the consumer or the user will be able to have a relationship with you because of credibility, because of trust and because he's experienced it to the truth. But when you drive the other way around and say, I'll start with the customer journey and work with this agency and this agency and throw all your claims all over the place, and your value chain has major problems, then whatever you claim outside is half-hearted. You lost the trust and the credibility. So whatever you invested on the business and on top of the business for marketing and brand is something that you cannot bring back. Because once reputation is ruined, it takes a long while to fix it. And if you're just a new business, imagine the harm. So based on that, I created brand clarity in the one word model. So I want to tell you about the one word model within the brand clarity concept. So the one word model, for example, for Apple is innovation, and that's applied across the value chain and the customer journey. Some people would say Tim Cook is not as innovative as Steve Jobs. Okay, right, no problem. But again, what Steve Jobs has created all these years, somebody needs to put it together and then make it grow. You cannot just have constant innovation. My innovation needs to settle. And for innovation to settle and evolve, it takes a while. So for every single innovation that comes out of the value chain, it needs to grow within the customer journey. So it sustains itself for a longer period. Example, Apple acquired Beats headphones. And recently they've launched their own headphones. Many will ask, but why? Because Beats does not have the Apple equity. Now, Apple's equity is very strong. So imagine that headphone going through the whole entire value chain. And when it comes out to customer journey, there's already a trust and credibility from the iPhone, from the Mac, from everything that Apple has touched. If the headphones do not deliver on the value of every product that Apple has introduced previously, it will burn in the past more than the future. So that's the power of how the value chain and the customer journey are very important in brand clarity. And the one word model, in the case of Apple, innovation, and in the case of Nike, inspiration. Look how they inspire our athletes. And in the case of Walmart, savings, and in the case of many. So this one word, you can use one word to build up your value chain. And that single word also can be the power in which it builds the whole customer journey. You cannot have a different experience for the value chain and a different experience for the customer journey, because the value chain does support the customer journey. So somebody would come and say, I'll give you the customer experience. Or he says, I'm a consultant in the customer experience. Then you ask him, do you understand anything about the value chain? He goes, no, I don't. He's absolutely useless, because you cannot have a power customer journey without the support of the value chain. So that's why the brand clarity, the one word model is very essential. I take to heart everything that's done internally as equally to everything that's externally, because the internal part is the support. So for example, somebody could tell you brand is marketing. No, brand is the whole entire business. Every function of the business is the brand, not just marketing.
How does brand purpose play a role in this strategy? I'm sure that you heard about Simon Sinek's "Start with Why," and people buy why you do it, not what you do. So how does that play along with your vision or your strategy or your framework?
Well, let's go back in the 70s. In the 70s, so I'm going to talk about brand and how brand came in. Why should everyone have a brand today? Back in the 70s, life was only transactional. You go to the supermarket, pick your stuff, and then no one is accountable. No one is responsible. You paid for it. Anything goes wrong, there's that number you call. They'll exchange it for you. Again, transactional. What brand did is, when it came to our space, brand said, you cannot, in order to retain and create relationship and loyalty with your stakeholders, you cannot have that transactional process. You need to start creating a relationship. And that requires high level of maintenance. And the only thing that can do that is brand. Because brand is a journey. Marketing is transactional. Brand is relationship. Marketing is a purchase. So when brand came in, while marketing is still power, it fulfilled the whole entire process. I mean, I don't want to keep on talking about Apple, but I think Apple's ecosystem now, if you have one of their products, it's very difficult to break away from any other Apple products because you want to live within the ecosystem, you know? So when that relationship you have with that ecosystem is not only the quality of the product, it's on the reputation of Apple. They establish that trust with you. So that's the brand itself. But the idea that brands is just aesthetics and you slap them on packages and you launch, which happens a lot in the Middle East, that's has nothing to do with what brand is or the concept or idea of brand.
Yeah, speaking of the Middle East, did you find major differences between the marketing landscape in the Middle East, especially in the GCC countries, where a lot of money has been spent on massive productions and my personal experience, since I also worked in Saudi Arabia, in Dubai, I noticed that here in America, people are more practical, are more pragmatic. You will feel a lot of it's different. Did you notice that too?
Yes. Well, see, the difference for me would be this. My experience in the Middle East is very recent. So my formative years were all in the West. So I come with a Western culture and with a Western mindset. And it seems to be odd to many. Well, the whole entire Middle East is trying to adapt to the conceptual thinking of what the West is applying, whether if it's management, whether it's marketing, whether it's brand, whether everything. It's Western education. It's Western tools. So, but the battle is the tool versus the mindset. So when you go and apply brand as I know it and so forth, it has to be tweaked. Agree. Culture, social, there's many factors that you need to apply. 100% agree. But the discipline itself doesn't change. So if you try to change a discipline, you need to have an insight why you want to change that discipline. Did you invent something? Did you ever invent a model that you can apply? No. Well, I published The Power of Belonging. That was a model I applied. Now I'm doing brand clarity. Soon I'll publish my book. So every time you come up with models, you need to publish it to the public because you need public expertise and public endorsements, whether like Dan Hill and so forth. Now, ideally, what works in the Middle East might not work in the West, and whatever works in the West might not work in the Middle East. Culture, social, and so forth. These are facts, no problem. But the discipline doesn't change. You cannot just change a discipline because, example, you graduated in graphic design. Example, you graduated in graphic design and you decided to be self-employed, and then you called the place branding agency, but you don't have any strategy. So if you're going to give me a booklet full of designs, logos, and this and design and that, these are called assets. But where's the strategy? Oh, I don't have the strategy. Then ethically, you should not call yourself branding strategy or branding agency because you're not one. So this is where the misconception happens a lot, not only in the Middle East, even China, even Asia, even Africa. In Europe and America, the discipline is very strong. So it's challenging to call yourself just branding and sell logos. You might go just to Upwork and Fiverr and do that, but not in an organizational structure, because the response of the public to it might not be easy.
I totally agree with you. In fact, I feel that this industry should be regulated to a point where, like, for example, if you are selling financial planning, you have to be licensed and certified by a certain board to claim that you are a financial planner. I think that marketing should have a similar function whereby we should have a licensing board so that we can clarify, because even I don't know if it happens to you, but sometimes even socially when I meet some people and I say, okay, I work in marketing, there's a stigma around this word. People are looking at you. They think about all these nasty salespeople who are so hard to dispose of, or they think about all of this scammy, salesy, unsolicited email marketing. All of that junk is kind of disturbing the profession. Do you support something like that?
Well, I'll tell you something, honestly. Even I'm not going to say the Middle East, but also in America. So back when I was in college, you'll get all these sales calls at home. They'll try to sell you anything, and it could be something that is quality or not. Back when I was in college, a freshman, we had this Columbia Records for $1. You buy like 9 CDs for $1 from Columbia Records. So you fill up the form, you mail it. Next thing you get is you mail the dollar inside, or a check for $1, and then or 99 cents, I believe, and then you get this 11 CDs. All right, that was a marketing tool. That was a marketing gimmick, because there's repetition, there's a relationship, but it was transactional. There was no brand. Now, unfortunately, which is very sad, marketing has a bad reputation of something that you do that you have to lie, unfortunately. So marketeers are known as big liars, because half what they say is not true, because they just want to make a sale. Now, when you meet the directors of marketing, a lot of them, not most of them, but a lot of them, like to exaggerate how successful they are and how successful their work is. But when it comes to reality, they're not there. But on the contrary, you will never find the chief marketing officer from Apple or Google or one of these big names go out and exaggerate, because reality speaks. You know what I mean? So people with weakness in brand and marketing usually like to go out and exaggerate, and they hate to be challenged. They would hide, or they're going to block you on LinkedIn. In my case.
All right, let's talk about the elephant in the room. So in 2022, ChatGPT was released, and with it came a barrage of language models that can produce text, they can produce images, videos. And just before we started recording this episode, Synthesia have launched their replica. So basically you can give it some video recording of ourselves, for example, like that, and it will create an avatar that replicates not only your video but also your audio, your sound. And then you can, from there on, you can just give it text and it will produce videos for you. What do you think that would impact long and short term on the marketing / brand landscape?
First of all, it's hitting the soft skill very hard. I mean, content producers are hit hard, whether if it's videos and so forth. So with the general content side of it, but I'd like to look at it from a positive side. So if I would, me as a consultant, let's say, on brand and marketing, somebody asked me, what would I be doing in 2028 if ChatGPT or others start writing the strategy? It will happen. There's no doubt. My role in 2027 or 2028 would never be to write the strategy. It'll be when the client comes, he's worked on it with one of the AI models, and for me to give the human validation. Yes, it's good. Just tweak here and there. So instead of doing that 8 hours or 3 months engagement of strategies, I'll end up doing a 1 hour validating what AI has produced, probably tweak it here and there. And that will be my role by 2028. So the second following up question is, should I wait to 2028 or should I do something today? Well, I'll keep on doing the strategies I do, but if it dies out, let it die out naturally. But I need to evolve a bit in the value in my business model. So I recently launched, and I'm happy with this question. I recently, 1st of July, I've launched something called the 2 hours power sessions. So if you have a problem with your brand strategy, whether if it's the brand attributes, positioning, unique selling proposition, brand archetypes, anything of brand and marketing, all you have to do is just book your 2 hour power session and we'll be able to solve it for you. Now, in that 2 hour power session, the client is not looking for me to build a whole entire strategy. He has a pain point and he wants me to address those pain points and advise them how to go about it. And that exactly what's going to happen in 2028 or 2029 when AI does this, all the stuff that I just mentioned. And my role would be the validation, just because at the end of the day, we're humans and we have 5 senses, and trust doesn't come on AI. Trust comes from the human side. So, you know what? AI is great, but I need somebody human who would tell me I'm on the right track, and he's an expert. So our evolution is a bit more stressful than ever, given how fast technology is going. Our evolution is it needs to move incredibly fast, or else we're dead. And that adds to the point of personal brand, because in this whole digitalization and AI, if you don't have a point of reference today as a personal brand, you're not going to be in business. Absolutely. But there's also one away from, within the AI space. One of the things that I've talked about with a client is he asked, by 2030, what do you think would you give me an example of what would you see AI do? I told him, you know what, when you put your suit on and you're in front of the mirror and you're ready to go out, AI will be able to tell you if you put a pound on or you're off. You don't have to go on scale. AI will read that for you. And if your colors are not right, the AI on the mirror, which is the stylist AI, will tell you, hey, you don't match, go and change. That's here it is, Najat. I'm going to say the cost of the mirror that you buy today versus what you're going to buy in 2030, it's going to be an arm and a leg. I'll remind you.
Yeah, I've seen some prototypes of similar technologies. Incredible. It's really hard to keep up. Like every time I open my LinkedIn, because I'm in that space, I follow a lot. It's just fascinating. All right, so let us talk about a CMO who recently got hired for a brand that doesn't have a strong brand. I always like the comparison between, let's say, again, we don't want to pursue Apple again, but between Apple and Dell, for example. Maybe sometimes you buy a laptop from Dell and it's the technicalities of that laptop is the specifications are much higher. There's the RAM and the visual, like all of the specs and numbers are better, but still, like, Apple has a cult-like following. So let's say a new CMO came to a company like Dell. I'm giving Dell as an example of this kind of companies with not a very strong brand. What would you advise them to do, kind of step by step? And what is your social media strategy in this day and age?
Okay. Well, first of all, fundamentally, to evolve Dell, first Apple and Dell. Let me put this to you. Dell is a product. Apple is an experience. Dell can never be an experience. They will fail. Now, let me give you another example. A guy in a cafe sitting on a Dell, the one next to him sitting on a Mac, and you're walking in from the door, and both are graphic designers that you called when you asked them to meet. The moment you start walking towards them, 80% to 90% most likely that you're going to think the guy behind the Mac is a better graphic designer than the guy behind Dell. That's perception. That's a value sold by Apple. Great. Now you sit down with the Mac guy and you're putting all the attention on the Mac guy because you assume that he is a better graphic designer. Before you get shocked, your first 30-second, what sold you is a better brand, not the guy. It's the better brand, which is Apple. Now, then you realize that the guy sitting on Dell is a better graphic designer. than the one in Apple. So we asked him, you know what, you need to come to my office. So you go to his office, start working on stuff. You like his stuff, but you're still going to approach him and tell him, why don't you buy a Mac? And you know why? Because you're already influenced by Mac. So you're trying to get him on Mac. He's going to tell you, listen, I don't like Mac. I love this. This is an easy thing. Okay, sure. But you'll have a 50% relationship with him. But if he's on a Mac, you would give him the world. That's the difference. Apple is an experience brand. Dell is a product brand. Apple is a premium brand.
What can Dell do?
Well, the evolution of Dell is almost impossible. If somebody's going to tell me Dell has to evolve, well, Dell can evolve. I'm not saying it cannot evolve, but that's going to require 25 years. That's cash burning right there. But what Dell can do is launch a separate brand that is not associated at all with Dell. And the name Dell should not be mentioned anywhere on it. And no one should know it's part of Dell till the brand strongly matures. Dell is not. It's
so sometimes,
yeah.
So you're saying that reputations cannot be undone. Like whatever happened to the brand name cannot be undone. So and then what happened to the rebranding? What people call rebranding doesn't work for something like that.
Well, rebranding. There's nothing called rebranding. That's a branding consultancy agencies trying to sell jargons to their clients. There's only two things: rebrand and repositioning. Rebrand is when you drop the name or you add to the name and you change things. Example, we used to call it Dunkin' Donuts. Now it's called Dunkin'. That's rebrand. Rebrand and repositioning both happen because the business vertical has changed. But in the case of Saudi Airlines, the national airlines that just went through a whole entire change, that's not a rebrand. That's a repositioning because the name never changed. So how would you call it a rebrand? That's because you changed the logo, because you changed the aesthetics. What you did is you took back society to nostalgia because there's a competing airlines that's coming out of Saudi Arabia, out of Riyadh, which is Riyadh Air. And you want to capture the idea of being the national airlines. Now, if this is considered a point of difference, or if this is considered a competitive advantage, I don't see it. Why? Because Riyadh, even if it's Riyadh Air, is still a Saudi Airlines. It belongs to Saudi Arabia. It's born in Saudi Arabia. There's still that national sentiment. So what exactly are you doing? Well, we put an old logo on to say we are the leading carrier. That doesn't matter. Your point is your values have not changed. You're not offering me a point of difference. If you're going to offer me what they offered when they first launched, they said, we have an AI service. So is every other airlines today. You know what I mean? AI is not a point of difference anymore because you can pop it up. A stylist on any of these fashion websites, there's AI, an AI stylist. So the point of difference, if it cannot be functional, it can be emotional. But here's the thing. What I see in rebrand is, in the case of Dell, for example, if you rebrand Dell and you introduce products that are the quality of Apple and better, would Dell succeed? Second question is, what are you going to do with all these customers of Dell today, the loyalists of Dell? You're going to throw them out. That's a business loss. You're throwing $1 billion out that you're trying to capture millions, increment millions, and maybe you don't succeed. So the best thing is to create a sub-brand that is not associated with your brand, that's not associated with you as Dell.
Yeah, sometimes it's just efficient to start on a clean slate and build from there.
Yeah.
Baaghil, is there anything I haven't asked you?
You know, you've drilled me. I like it. I like it. You drilled me.
All right.
I love the challenge.
That's awesome. I mean, I'm a student of your LinkedIn
Thank you
post.
so much.
Are you focusing only on LinkedIn? Do you have
No,
any other social networks?
I'm a believer of consistency. So for me, LinkedIn is the only platform I use in terms of brand and marketing, and it's the most relatable platform and the most relevant platform. My target audience are leadership, chief executive officers, board members, and government officials. So, and most of them are on LinkedIn. So that's where I see my relevance. I don't see my voice elsewhere.
Wonderful to have you, Baaghil. It's a privilege. Thank you for your time.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me, and the best for you, Nigel. Take care.